High above the Alps, an eagle soars gracefully across the endless skies, watched from below by a forester named Dancer, a man whose life is devoted to protecting the creatures of the wild. And among all the stories hidden within these mountains, none is more unforgettable than the tale of Abel and Lucas. It all begins with the hatching of an egg, as a tiny eaglet slowly crawls into the world. Moments later, another egg cracks open, revealing the true star of the story. The two eaglets are lovingly guarded by their parents, but before long, their father takes flight in search of food. Meanwhile, the sworn enemy of the eagle is introduced, a hunter named Keller. For a time, the eagle family lives peacefully, until tragedy strikes. The father eagle suddenly finds himself locked in a brutal battle against another eagle trespassing into his territory. He fights with everything he has to protect his family, but fate is merciless. By the end of the violent struggle, both eagles lose their lives. Back at the nest, the mother eagle senses that her mate will never return. Realizing she must now raise the two eaglets alone, she prepares for a difficult future. At the crash site, Dancer and Keller examine the lifeless birds. Keller tells Dancer there's nothing left to save. Dancer then asks how Keller's son Lucas is doing, but Keller only sighs and says that Lucas is a strange boy, one who seems to communicate only with nature itself. Afterward, Keller calls for his dog Scout and walks away. Back at the nest, the mother eagle leaves to search for food. Almost immediately, conflict erupts between the two brothers. As she flies across the forest, she passes an abandoned house that Lucas has turned into his secret hideout. It was once his home, before it burned to the ground. Now, Lucas returns there to escape his father. Inside, he discovers an old photograph of himself with his parents, a rare memory of happier days. As he stares at it, he recalls the distant sound of his mother's voice calling out to him before fading away. Later that night, Lucas sits alone in his room, opening a metal box filled with all the strange little objects he treasures. Among them, he carefully places an eagle feather. Just then, Keller walks in holding a bird he caught for dinner. He tells Lucas he plans to cook a dish his mother used to make, but Lucas says nothing. Frustrated by the silence, Keller leaves the room in annoyance. As time passes, the mother eagle makes a heartbreaking decision. She realizes she can only raise one eaglet properly. The older eaglet begins attacking his younger brother and eventually pushes him from the nest, sending him plummeting toward the forest below, almost like the tragic scene between Scar and Mufasa. But miraculously, branches break the fall, and the young eaglet lands unharmed on the forest floor. The terrified little eagle cries out desperately for its mother's help. Yet this was the choice she had already made. She was unwilling to raise the weaker child. Hearing the cries of the stronger eaglet above, she abandons the younger one completely. Night falls, and the helpless eaglet remains alone in the freezing wilderness. A fox suddenly attacks, but despite its size, the young eagle manages to fight back. Soon after, Scout notices the eaglet and begins barking wildly as he runs toward it. Lucas chases after the dog and discovers the tiny creature. Without hesitation, he removes his jacket, gently wraps the eaglet inside it, and carries it back to the abandoned house. Lucas decides that from now on, he will raise the young eagle himself. He quickly builds a makeshift nest and carefully places the eaglet inside. Then he wraps it tightly to keep it warm before promising to return with food. Later that night, after Keller falls asleep, Lucas sneaks into the kitchen, steals a few sausages, and rushes back to the eaglet. The starving bird eagerly devours the food. From a distance, Dancer watches Lucas through binoculars. He's delighted to see the boy enjoying himself and realizing that Lucas shares the same deep connection with nature that he does. Back at home, Lucas struggles to light a match in the kitchen when Keller walks in and watches silently, disappointed as always, before walking away. Meanwhile, Dancer visits the abandoned house and approaches the eagle. But unlike Keller, Dancer means no harm. Instead, he explains that eagles are difficult to feed and that sausages are terrible for them. He hands Lucas some animal liver and shows him how to properly care for the bird. Dancer asks Lucas why he keeps angering his father by constantly running away. He tells him that refusing to speak is already painful enough for Keller, and disappearing only makes things worse. Before leaving, Dancer breaks open part of the wall to let sunlight pour into the dark house. Later that day, Lucas and Keller work together, but when Lucas tries to leave, his father angrily stops him and forces him to continue working, insisting that he must learn to earn his keep like a man. That night, after finishing the chores in the chicken pen, Lucas secretly leaves the gate open. Before long, foxes sneak inside and slaughter the chickens. Terrified of how Keller will react, Lucas grabs one of the dead chickens and runs back to his hideout. While he's gone, more foxes sneak into the abandoned house to attack the little eagle. Thankfully, Lucas returns just in time to chase them away. He gently places the eaglet back into its nest, feeds it the chicken, and spends time playing with it. Later that night, Lucas reads the Bible and accidentally opens to the story of Cain and Abel. The story perfectly mirrors the fate of the two eaglets. That's when he finally gives the young eagle a name, Abel. Soon after, Dancer brings Lucas more meat for Abel and tells him he has already spoken with Keller about letting Lucas spend the summer with him. The next day, Dancer takes Lucas to his home and reveals a beautiful room he prepared just for him. He also gifts Lucas a falconry glove, hoping it can be used one day to train Abel. Still, Lucas chooses to spend the night back at the abandoned house beside Abel. Meanwhile, deep in the mountains, the mother eagle begins training Abel's brother, whom Lucas has named Cain. Like a true eagle mother, she teaches Cain how to fly by forcing him to take dangerous leaps. The next morning, Lucas wakes up to discover that Abel is gone. Panicked, he searches everywhere before finally spotting Abel soaring through the sky. The eagle lands nearby, and Lucas rushes toward him. But before he can reach him, Abel takes flight once again. The moment deeply hurts Lucas. Dancer comforts him, explaining that Abel simply wants to experience freedom in the wild. But deep down, even Dancer doesn't know whether Abel will ever return. Abel attempts to hunt rodents on his own, but repeatedly fails. 3 days pass without any sign of him. Lucas begins worrying about the dangers Abel faces, his father's rifle, and Cain. Then, while Lucas is walking home, Abel suddenly flies down and lands directly in front of him. Overwhelmed with emotion, Lucas builds a small memorial for Abel using stones and one of his feathers. Later, Lucas and Dancer begin properly training Abel how to hunt. Little by little, Abel adapts to life in the wild and grows stronger with each passing day. But eventually, summer comes to an end. Dancer tells Lucas it's time for him to return home to his father. And more importantly, it's time for Abel to return to the world where he truly belongs. Dancer explains that if Abel remains with humans too long, he will lose his instincts and never experience true freedom. So together, they blindfold Abel and carry him to a distant mountain far from home. Lucas removes the blindfold and finally sets him free. Winter arrives soon after. One day, Lucas secretly watches Keller setting bear traps throughout the forest. The moment Keller leaves, Lucas triggers every trap himself. Time passes, and Lucas eventually returns to Abel's memorial. He leaves meat beside it and lies down nearby, waiting, until he slowly falls asleep. Meanwhile, Dancer discovers Lucas's footprints in the snow, along with the tracks of a wolf following the same trail. Lucas suddenly awakens to the terrifying sound of growling. A wolf emerges from the forest. He immediately runs for his life, but in the chaos, he steps into one of the bear traps and collapses to the ground screaming in agony as the wolf closes in. Just before the animal attacks, Dancer fires a shot into the air, scaring it away. He frees Lucas from the trap and carries him home. As they leave, Abel quietly arrives at the memorial and eats the meat Lucas had left behind. Days later, while Lucas recovers in the abandoned house, Dancer tells him the ancient story of the Brothers of the Wind. The following day, Abel encounters Cain proudly displaying his hunting skills. Abel tries to approach him, but the brothers soon break into a fierce fight. Eventually, the battle ends, and the two brothers unexpectedly share their prey together. Not long after, Lucas decides he can no longer live with his father. He returns to the old house to pack his belongings, hoping that somehow Abel's return might still stop him from leaving forever. But just as he prepares to walk out the door, Keller suddenly appears. Keller shuts the door behind him and finally speaks honestly. He says that when the house burned down, Lucas cried endlessly, yet now he won't even say a single word to him. Then Keller lights a match and drops it onto the floor, burning the family photograph Lucas had been holding onto. Suddenly, Lucas flashes back to the night of the fire. It's revealed that Lucas blames his father for his mother's death in the blaze. The trauma shattered him completely, causing him to withdraw from everyone around him. That same night, Lucas runs away deep into the forest. And as fate would have it, a violent storm begins raging across the mountains. Keller desperately searches for Lucas, but the storm makes it nearly impossible. Meanwhile, Lucas searches for Abel and eventually finds him alongside Cain. But before he can react, heavy rain triggers a massive rock slide. Lucas barely survives by taking shelter behind higher ground. Tragically, one of the eagles is crushed beneath the falling rocks, though no one knows whether it was Abel or Cain. Moments later, Lucas tries climbing the slippery rocks, only to be nearly struck by lightning. The blast throws him backward, knocking him unconscious. After the storm finally passes, Keller finds Lucas, embraces him tightly, and apologizes for every way he failed him as a father. 2 years later, Lucas and Keller travel home together carrying firewood. Their relationship has completely changed. Lucas now speaks freely with his father, and Keller proudly praises him for remaining strong through everything. But suddenly, Lucas hears the sound of birds overhead. He reaches inside his jacket and pulls out the old falconry glove he has carried ever since releasing Abel. Keller gently tells him he must let go, because Abel died in the rock slide long ago. But Lucas refuses to believe it. He says he can still feel Abel's presence nearby. Then Keller suddenly tells him to hold out his arm. Confused, Lucas turns around and sees Abel soaring toward him through the sky. Abel lands perfectly on Lucas's gloved hand. For a brief moment, both Lucas and Keller gently caress the eagle together. Then, with a smile, Lucas removes the tag he once placed on Abel, and this time sets him free forever. He watches happily as Abel disappears into the endless sky. Later, Abel returns to his nest, where a female eagle waits beside him. Together, they watch as a new eaglet hatches from its egg, continuing the eternal circle of life. And that brings us to the end. This was a recap of the 2015 movie Brothers of the Wind, directed by Gerardo Olivares and Otmar Penker, starring Jean Reno, Manuel Camacho, and Tobias Moretti. If you found this movie refreshing, let us know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this recap, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel for more incredible movie stories like this. And as always, thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next one.